Hi everyone. Today we have Kate Bishop joining us, special guest to talk about how to improve your mental health. And I think mental health is something that we have talked about a lot at the start of the year. We are prioritizing mental health in Greenpark, and that's why we are now making a mental health day available for anyone in the team who feel like they need to take that mental day off outside of sick leave. And I think it's important, especially I think this month, mental health awareness month is really encouraging people to understand better how to improve mental health. And this is, I would say, an ongoing exercise or effort. Like your physical fitness, it is something that it's not you don't do this once. This has to be a continuous effort that you do to make sure that you have a healthy mental health. And I think that we go through moments, we go through our ups and downs, and we just want to make sure that it doesn't hit to the point where you get into a burnout situation. And that's why we're trying to really facilitate the mental health day. We'll talk through later on in the session, how do you use your mental health day. um, and I think really to understand and sort of reflect, um, are you in a state of stress? What level stressed are you at? Because remember, I said in my previous coaching, not all stress are the same level. So different levels of stress. And today with us, Kate will discuss and share her thoughts and tips and tools on how do we manage this. And before we start, I wanted Kate to share a little bit about herself, her background, her personal experience with mental health, and what is a confidence coach and well-being coach. Maybe you can share that.
Thank you so much, Pete. It's a real honour to be with you here today, folks. And I've done quite a bit of work with Greenpark UK previously. So I know you. I feel like I know you. I'm part of the Greenpark family, as it were. So yes, as Fee very kindly said, I'm a career confidence coach and workplace well-being facilitator. So I will come into organisations like you guys, have conversations like this, run workshops and sessions. Partly this is my own journey with mental health, good, bad and ugly, partly due to, because of my poor mental health journey, I lost a lot of confidence and hit a real big brick wall with my career. I used to work in the events industry in hospitality staffing in London, and for 5 years I loved it. I was in a small company, we grew it, it was amazing, had all these wonderful experiences, lots of fun events, got to meet a few famous people, it's all rather fun, hang out in some nice places, but it was really stressful. It was very reactive. So hospitality is very reactive, and I don't know what everyone does who's on the call today, but I'm assuming quite a lot of what you do is quite reactive. And it felt like it was sort of always chasing our tails, always firefighting, always trying to catch up. And it was at this constant level of pressure. And we'll talk a little bit about the human performance curve today, but that pressure was beginning to turn into stress, and that ongoing stress. And you may have heard the term stress bucket. So we have a bucket every day, and we like to start and wake up and do our wonderful miracle mornings, if you've read that book, and do all the wonderful things to set you up well for the day. But every time we have a little moment, it goes into our stress bucket. And so before I even got to work, my stress bucket was overflowing. It was full because there've been panics here, stress is there, other people, it's always people, had caused problems. And I think Fia mentioned it to you yesterday, sort of ping pong between stress and anxiety, stress, anxiety, stress, anxiety. Would wake up scared I'd lose my job, desperate for them to fire me because I was hating it so much, terrified that they were going to fire me because I didn't know what else to do, didn't believe I could do anything else, and then hit into this sort of pit of depression. And that lasted about 3 years, going that lovely cycle of stress, anxiety and depression. And it just got to breaking point, and I finally told my very supportive family, finally told my parents about how awful I felt, how miserable, how I was taking a lot of sick days. I'd never taken sick days before. Our company didn't really do anything with mental health. It's quite a small company, admittedly, but it really wasn't tapped into that at all. And it ended up, I made a very difficult decision to leave and to retrain to be a coach. And yes, it was a difficult decision. It was probably one of the best decisions I've made. I haven't made many wise decisions, folks. That was a good one. But it really showed, when I came through all of that and came out the other end, I thought, actually, no one should go through that. No one should wake up on Monday fearing they're going to get fired for no reason at all, dreading having to go to work. Literally had to talk myself out of bed to go and do a little workout, to then have a shower, to then get on my bike, to then cycle to work. And cycling into work, just running through all the things I was grateful for that I had at least. No one should feel like that. And work doesn't have to be wonderful 100% of the time, but there should be reason and purpose and joy there to a certain extent, ideally to a larger extent. And if you're constantly hitting that brick wall, then yes, you're going to fall off out of it, fall into burnout. So that's what inspired me to turn things around. And I thought I was going to go and work with wonderful organisations that were struggling, that had grown a lot, that were losing their top talent, losing their key people, where their teams were burning out. And what actually happened, surprisingly enough, well, not that surprising really, everyone who came to me who wanted coaching, their stories mirrored mine in some way. They'd lost their confidence, they'd hit a burnout, they had no idea what they wanted to do, they just knew they didn't want to be where they were now. So that's why I started to work with people on the confidence to go and do what they really wanted to do. And what actually came from that is, especially those who are struggling with their mental health, it was having the courage to go and talk to people about it, to go and say, look, I'm really struggling. I have no idea how to solve this. I have no idea what support I need, but I do need to start to talk to people. So that's the reason why I do what I do, and one of the reasons why I'm here today.
Thank you, Kate, for sharing that. I think you mentioned the feeling of firefighting and pressure that at work. And I think this is something that a lot of us feel on a regular basis, right? Whether it's pressure from client or our colleagues or our bosses. And I think every day it's a matter of like, okay, what is going to happen next? I have to deal with so many things on a regular basis. And because of that, we feel overwhelmed. Right. And because of that, I think a lot of times we don't know how to deal with those situations. It then becomes we push ourselves, and it's like, when you have a glass of water and you pour and it's like overfilling, there's nothing else, and I think it's important for us to know what are the strategies to deal with stressful situations. And I mentioned earlier on maybe identifying what level are the stress, because then you can manage it differently. Maybe Kate, you can share a little bit about understanding those, identifying those, sort of stressful situations. And also, I think a lot of times, and I just had a call earlier today where, it's like something happened to somebody who is reacting to the way that somebody is reacting. It's like, I feel when you are going through something and it is not your normal way of saying, but you are feeling really stressed and pressured, you may not be yourself fully. And so you may be reacting and saying things that may not be what you would typically say. And then the other person will then say, what's wrong? Why is this person saying these things to me? And that's when you need to realize, okay, this person may be going through something. So it's not about this person this person is just reacting to what this person is going through in their personal life versus what and then the other person is thinking, shit, did I do something wrong? You probably didn't do anything wrong. It's just that person. So I think it's really about identifying those things and finding the root cause of what happened. So Kate, let's discuss that.
Right, let's unpick and unpack, gang. So stress is something we do. I'm preaching to the converted here. I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but it's your amygdala. So there's a little nugget in your brain's constantly scanning our environment for threats. And then if it perceives a threat, it sends cortisol and all throughout other lovely chemicals throughout our body to say there's a threat, we need to deal with it. That's our stress reaction, often called the 3 Fs: freeze, flight, or hang on, freeze, flight, I've forgotten the third F. When you faint. So you just, everything, you freeze, or you run away, or you have such a physical reaction, your body just switches off and you faint for a moment. Now, this was fantastic when we were evolving, when we were coping with life endangering threats. The problem is, generally in our day-to-day, we're not dealing with threats to that extent. They're not that dangerous. An email from a client is not going to kill you. It might feel like it in the moment, or you might kill them once you've read the email. But generally, we are not dealing with such horrific situations. There are many places in the world that still are, but generally, we are not. The problem is, our amygdala still perceives a lot of things as threats, so still has the same reaction. And this is where we can say, oh, that person really stressed me out. Oh, this client really stresses me out. This task really stresses me out. Actually, what we really want to do is get hold of that and say, hang on a minute, this causes me to have a stress reaction. Because once we start to understand what causes our stress reaction, we can respond accordingly. We can take back control. So we can say to our amygdala, hang on a minute, calm down, tap into our prefrontal cortex and really think things through with a bit of clarity. So the first thing that I do with clients is say, go and write a stress diary. Okay, so every time you have that feeling of stress, and for everybody it's a bit different. Some people, you get really clouded in your thinking. For others, you might actually have quite a physical reaction. I have clients who've been physically sick or who feel sick. I definitely get a bit clammy. I feel quite literally the hairs on the back of my neck sort of peak, and my heart goes racing really, really quickly. Everybody's very, very different. So with your stress diary, really think about, well, hang on a minute, what's the situation? What has caused this stress reaction? Or who has caused it? Where are you? For some people, it's they have very high social anxiety. For others, and I work with a lot of people on the confidence with public speaking in meetings, things like that, that really gets to them. And think about, who are you with? Because yes, other people may trigger something in us, and a lot of what our parents and caregivers have done have come from places of love, but sometimes there will be something. I have a very dear friend, if you say certain things, it triggers her mum. There'd be quiet, and she knows it. She's done a lot of work on herself. She knows it now. She closes down that conversation. So understanding what the situation is, what you are doing, where you are, and who you are with, and getting really clear on that. And therefore understanding your reaction, because you'll begin to see patterns, you begin to see themes within your stress diary. And keep it for a week, keep it for a month, depends how much stress you have. Because then you can begin to ask yourself, go to the next stage of, well, hang on a minute, how can I use this stress positively? Sometimes we have eustress, really positive stress, often known as pressure. Sometimes we have distress, really negative stress. That's the bad stuff. What we want to do is think about, well, how can I turn the distress into eustress? Make the bad, the ugly, into the good. How can I use it to push me forwards rather than paralyze me? And a part of that is understanding, where do I have control? So really thinking about, when you look at your stress diary, well, where did I have control in that situation? Where did I not have any control? What can I let go of? You think of Frozen, classic track, let it go. Let it go. Then you think about the bits that you do have control of. How much control? What can you do to get a positive outcome? And I think this is really important, because when you have that stress reaction, your amygdala is keeping you safe. It wants you to win against all odds. Whereas actually, when we use a stress response, a positive stress response, we think about, where's the win-win? How do I win? How do they win? Where's the benefit here? And really thinking about, where's the control I have? Where's the positive impact I can make? And of course, using your stress diary and going, well, actually, there's certain things that are completely out of my control. If it's really difficult to let them go, then it's time to start having those conversations of, right, how do we, as a team, as a department, as a collective, how do we begin to solve some of these things that are causing us to have a stress reaction?
You mentioned earlier on, the triggers, right? Because I think it's important for us to also understand or identify what causes your reaction. What are the triggers, right? Because by identifying those things, you then can adjust the way that you react to things, and the way that, because I feel like if not, you'll just continue to just be the people triggering you, and you will just react the way that you react. I think it's very important for us to reflect and understand what are the triggers. What is it about that conversation that triggers you? What about that person triggers you? And that's when you will start identifying the root cause potentially. And again, this will take a bit of time, because you need to really look at it from a long term. How do you always better yourself? So you won't immediately solve one thing, and I think one of the things that we talked about in being the stress level is about how do you react in what are the steps you need to take immediately, and what are the steps that you need to do with time. Because I think
Mm.
that especially immediately, because your body, like you said, it's either I want to run away, or I'm like frozen, or I just want to disappear, right? And so what is the right way to react to things? What are the tips that Kate, you can share on the reaction? Because it's immediate, right? It's like it's happening right now, and your body is like, and then
Mhm.
what do you do with time, when you have a bit of time to reflect? You shared a little bit earlier, but I think immediately deal
How
with
do
that.
we cope with that in the moment stress? Yes, because we're
Yeah.
never going to stop that reaction. It's a biological reaction. That's part of our makeup. And actually, that's a good thing. Because if you're driving or if you're walking, that reaction will save you. It will stop you from crashing into somebody, because that's what someone's there, brake or whatever it might be. So I think it's really important to think about, I'm never going to stop that reaction, I'm never going to close it down, but we can begin to regain a bit of control in the moment. And I think this is where our self-awareness, we work hard at this to really understand, is this stress, the distress, or is this pressure? Is this something that will drive me forwards? And there's a great model Yerkes and Dodson did of the human performance curve. And it's the curve up here. And they state that for peak performance in a work setting, you should be right at the top of your human performance curve. Because at either side, one side is burnout, the other side is rust out. When we're not doing anything, we're just sat there twiddling our thumbs, we're really bored, we're not engaged, we're not motivated. Burnout is when we're exhausted, when we've hit the wall. The slight problem is, if you're at the very, very top of your peak performance curve, you don't have anywhere to go if more pressure is given to you. And their theory is actually you should always be at the peak performance. I don't agree with that. I have a lot of issues with that. I think you need to be just before it, because when that pressure comes, when that in that moment stress comes, you know that you have got space, you have got capacity to step up and step back safely. And I'm talking about emotionally safely, mentally health in a safe way. So it may be, it's out there, this human performance curve. It's a good idea to get that and think about, where are you constantly working? Because if you're constantly working, and I was at peak performance, go, 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 do this, do that all the time, no days off, of course you're going to fall down the burnout side. So I think it's understanding that self-awareness of, right, what can I do? What can I change? Where can I get a bit of control back? Who can help me with this? Who can support me or guide me to take a few steps back? I think when we're talking about in the moment stress, there is something called the scale of awfulness, which sounds a lot better than it actually is. But if you imagine in front of you, you have quite literally a line, a scale, and at one end you have 1, and that is your ultimate comfort zone. That is everything in life is going really well. You're super relaxed, day off, on holiday, wine, gin, coffee, whatever in hand. That's you're loving life at that side, at that end. The other end, that's at 100. And that is the worst possible situation you can imagine. We talked about, there's some people in the world who are going through genuine, awful, life-endangering stress. that's them. They are probably at the very top end of their scale of awfulness at the moment. So when you have that stress reaction, just take a moment, think, oh, I'm feeling stressed. Because you've looked at, you've done your stress diary, you know that that feeling is stress, distress, not good pressure, bad stress. Put your stress on your scale. What number is it on there? Are you a 10, 50, 62, 102? But really put it on there. And the simple act of just stopping and going, hang on a minute, where am I on here? How bad is this? If you're in a car crash, it's probably going to be quite bad because that's scary, that's terrifying. If it's the email from that client, then maybe it's not so high. But really think about, okay, how much will this situation matter in 12 months' time? What's going on? What has caused you to respond and react with stress? That situation, how much will it matter in 12 months' time? Now, for some things, it really will matter. Great. Then we think about, right, where's the control? Where's the positive impact I can have? What resources do I need? Who do I now need to get to this really positive outcome? If it's not going to matter that much in 12 months' time, think about, right, what can I let go of? What can I maybe defer, delegate, move on from? And then once you've gone through that process, and I know it sounds like quite a lot, and I'm talking this through to you, but thinking it through, it's quicker. But then you can go, right, well, where is my stress reaction on my scale now? And chances are it's moved down quite a bit. But just so you're aware, folks, we lose intelligence due to stress. In that moment, our IQ drops. And that happens at about 5 on the stress scale.
If you think about it, when we are stressed and we're reacting immediately, we say stupid things that we regret later on, right? It's because, like you said, our IQ drops, and so you're just reacting and you're saying things that you may not necessarily meant, you know. And I think when we are dealing with difficult situation, have a moment to pause and just breathe. And I think previously we talked a lot about the tips and the tools on breathing, and it does play a very important part of managing your stress is simple breathing, right? Because it allows you oxygen to go, you know, and really make sure that you okay, so what's happening? And you don't have, I think sometimes also when you're being triggered, is this trigger something that you're dealing with internally, or maybe that person is trying to provoke you? Could it be that? And so you don't want to give permission to, you know, allow how you know, permission to feel bad to that person. You should never give permission to the other person how you should feel. You should manage that yourself. And so when you have time to sort of like breathe and just pause, even for like a few seconds, you don't have to respond immediately when somebody is trying to, you know, if they said something, whether it's to provoke you or, you know, innocently, they don't realize they are doing that trigger. It's still a moment to process, because there's a few things, right? One is somebody's trying to provoke you, or somebody unconsciously is doing that because they themselves is going through something and they are not realizing what they're saying is affecting and impacting the other person. So it's your job to take care of yourself. It is your job to protect yourself, you know, and so it is, you don't give permission to other people to make you feel other than what you want to feel, right? So I think a moment just breathing do help in the reacting, so that you don't say the wrong thing or you don't do the, you know, the reaction. I feel like sometimes when I do that, it sort of allows me to sort of process and then have a better answer, rather than, you know, just I sometimes that happen and you're like, shit, did I just say that? You know. So I think it takes practice to just okay.
Yes, I think, I mean, you guys have done a lot on breath work already, and a simple tool I use with clients is screen breathing. Breathe around your screen. You inhale up the short side through your nose, you exhale along the long side through your mouth, and you just keep on doing that, because chances are we're in front of a screen a lot of our day, whether it's phones, whether it's laptops, whether it's computers. But by inhaling through your nose quite short but deep, and then exhaling long and slow out of your mouth, that is how your body calms you down from your stress reaction. That's how it takes back control. So you're just jumping up the process. You're just saying, right, I'm taking control, we're going to calm down.
Yeah.
So that's a physical way of grounding you, but also you're triggering your brain to go, oh yeah, we need to be calm now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely. And I think, you know, what you said about giving others permission to make you feel bad, and or not to give people permission, it's really hard. It is really hard, especially if you are at the top of your human performance curve and you're in that stress pressure state. And you know the classic phrase of it's the straw that broke the camel's back. One word and you just explode. I think the problem is understanding when you're at that point, and actually then having the courage to say to who you're with and say, look, I'm actually having a really tough day. Can we talk about how we're going to manage what we're working on, or this meeting, or whatever it is, so they are fully aware where you are at. Or if they're saying it to you, you're like, oh wow, they've got a lot going on. Okay, how can I support them? Works both ways, folks.
You mentioned about telling the other person how you're feeling. I think a lot of time we don't. A lot of time we assume people know that we are frustrated, that we're angry or whatever, but we can't assume, because they are going through their own things. They may not be able to understand what you are going through. And so it's important to tell them how you're feeling, so that, you know, then they will have the understanding of what you're going through. And it's like, okay, I understand. So now how can I help? Like you said, because a lot of time we are operating with assumption that, you know, oh my God, why is this thing not done? I don't understand why this person is not doing it. And you get frustrated. And then this, you know, going into that conversation, the other person will be like, but I have all this shit that I'm going through, but you don't know. And so then that's a better conversation, is by, okay, I'm sorry that I'm not delivering the work, but it's because I'm going through some personal stuff, and I'm just, it's hard for me right now. So I hope that you can give me a bit of, I understand I have to finish this, but do you think, you know, so people have empathy, people will be more understanding, you know. So you're right in a sense that a lot of time conflict happen is because we don't communicate how we feel, or scared. And I think you mentioned this, you're scared to tell people that you are not strong enough, you're going through stress, or you're going through things, and because you're afraid that by saying that people will think you're weak, and so you cannot do your job. And because of all of those things, you know, you don't want to tell people. So I think you shared this a little bit with me on, you know, the fact that people don't want to share as much because they think they're afraid that people will judge them, and like, oh my God, what is, you know.
Absolutely. I think, yes, and that was where I was. I was terrified that if I said to my boss, by the way, I'm really struggling to get into work, let alone do my job, I thought that was it, I'd be out the door. So I think first and foremost, you know, remember what your organization does for you. You have mental health days. Greenpark will support mental health, good, bad, positive, and understanding what support is available to you. I used to work and did a lot of work in work wellbeing for a UX agency, and we had a great, you know, portal that people could access. They could get a lot of information. The amount of times I had someone go, I'm not feeling too good, and they were open about it, which was great. Where can I get this information? Every week I would say in our team meeting, don't forget you have your stress helpline. Don't forget you have your portal login. So understanding where that support is, but I think key here, and I suppose like really I'm talking to the managers and the leaders who are on the call here, understanding what your individual team members need. For a lot of people, accessing a portal probably isn't going to work for them at certain stages. They will just need to talk to be able to make them feel safe. And I think in mental health, we talk a lot about safe spaces. I would actually say creating brave spaces. it takes a lot of courage to be strong enough to be vulnerable, to say, I'm struggling and it's really affecting me. And I think one thing that you can do is a wellness and action plan. And this was created by the charity Mind, which is, I believe, a UK charity. You can access it. I'm very happy to send over the format of it. But that is understanding for yourself, but also for your manager, the moments that you're really struggling. They'll pick up on signs. When I'm having a really poor mental health day, look out for these signs. I might be snappy. I might be very quiet. I've gone into myself. I might not be responding quickly. I might not be attending meetings. I might be taking more days off than usual just to be able to get through the week, the month. But it also shows your ideal ways of working. Actually, what you do need are these things. Everything from your environment, from the level of support, and how that support is given. I used to work with, and he was a fantastic boss. He was absolutely fantastic. But he would start off every week, how are you? How was your weekend? Don't talk about work for the first minutes. How was your weekend? Talk to me about that. Because that immediately made me feel a bit more relaxed. I was chatting about fun stuff, but also he would pick up on if I'd had a really tough weekend. He knew that, he had that warning sign. So I think it's understanding that as well. And a leader who I work with, this is great. She's working with someone who doesn't have a lot of confidence. And they have their weekly wins meeting on a Friday where they talk about everything they've done that's gone really well. And they talk about the value that they deliver. And that really bolsters his confidence and shows him how well he's doing. And actually, it's leading him to probably get promoted in 6 months' time, which is great, win-win. Then they have their Monday dump meeting. Half an hour, all of the shit. It all comes out, everything they're worried about, the challenges they're facing, the people that are annoying them, the demands. And she says, we've really separated it. Fridays are fantastic. Lift you up, enjoy your weekend, go have fun. Don't worry about the challenges, because we know at Monday morning, we've got our dump meeting and we're going to sort it all out. What a fantastic way to support someone who wasn't even able to speak to his other manager about his concerns. So that's something to suggest, maybe to try and see if that works.
I want to really ask you to share how do we utilize mental health day. Great that Greenpark really encourages people to use mental health day, because they really need to just time to themselves and not have to deal with whatever they're going through. But I think there are efficient way of using it, and then there's ways that is not really good at using it. Maybe you can share. Yeah,
I think yes. So I think I do a lot of reframing of language with clients. And I think mental health is great. We get it. When someone says mental health, we understand it. However, I much prefer language which is more appropriate for the moment. I need a recovery day. I need a recharge day. I need a refuel day. I need a thrive day. I need a switch off day. And actually, you can then begin to go, well, actually, what do I need right now? I need to go and spend a day in a spa with my best friend. Or I need to go and read just a load of books by myself. I need to go out and be in nature for the day. I need to sleep, whatever it may be. So understanding what you need versus what you would like to do. And I think that's a really tricky one. It may be easy and nice to sit there and eat a load of very nice, but probably a bit junk food, like watch back-to-back films, or do a load of gaming. But actually what you need is to go out, get some daylight, get some sunshine, go into nature, and think about your resilience pillars here. Your 6 resilience pillars: sleep, that good quality sleep, like we were talking before with the caffeine situation, your nutrition and hydration. How are you eating? Are you eating well? We don't have Deliveroo here. Funnily enough, I eat very well. There's no option. But are you getting enough exercise or movement? And is that movement working well for you? Are you spending time in nature? I mean, that doctors over here in the UK, I'm not sure if it's the same with you guys, but they're prescribing people with depression walks in nature. Like, they don't worry about the pills. Go out there, enjoy what the world has to offer. And your interests, your hobbies, all these wonderful things that you do outside of work, help you switch off from work. And of course, your support pillars, understanding what support you need. Is it therapy? Is it mentoring? Is it coaching? Is it medication in some ways? Is it a combination of all of those?
I think one of the things that we are connected 24/7, maybe a disconnect could help.
Absolutely.
No phone, no social media, no emails. And that's when you take, for me, you can say, I just want to take a mental day off and I'm going to disconnect. So I'm not available. I'm just going to
I have
disappear.
clients that they put their work phone or their phone in a lockbox. So they're not even tempted, because it is, isn't it? It is an addiction.
It is.
The power of social media is an addiction of keeping us trapped in that scrolling, the doom scrolling, but also the entertainment scrolling, all of that, and work as well. And that, I think, is when you do have to say, I'm not available for today, unless there is a dire emergency. And really set those boundaries very clearly, what a dire emergency is. Do not contact me. And if somebody oversteps those boundaries, I had it at the a few months ago, I was on holiday and somebody contacted me and they knew I was off. They had my out of office reply and they still messaged me. I said, I'm on holiday. I will respond when I'm back. I would not have done that a few years ago. I mean, of course, absolutely. But it's really, no, these are my boundaries for my mental health, my physical health, for everything. Absolutely, yeah. And if you find switching off really hard, tone it down. If you can't go cold turkey with it, take it down. Give yourself time limits with things, rather than, okay, I can't do a whole day. Okay, well, I can spend an hour. That's it. And there's all sorts of things I think you can put on your phone to close down apps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that disconnect is really, really important.
I know it's hard. I have that problem as well. I know that when I say that I'm going on leave, it's like I'm still online. And it's like, it's not good. Like, I think you have to make a habit. At the end of the day, this whole conversation that we're having today is about how do you improve your mental health. You own that. Oh, we can give you the support, we can give you the help, we can facilitate, but at the end of the day, only you yourself can help you. And I think that's really important for you to know, that you can take control, you can decide, you can ask for help, you can, it's your decision. Because at the end of the day, only you truly can help yourself.
We do have a question, Fee, about triggers from Trina. So thank you so much. And says, when we identify what triggers us, how do we help make the person who triggered us accountable, whether unintentional, but especially if intentional? So Trina, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong here from what I'm reading there, but I assume this from what you're saying is telling the other person how they've affected you. And that's a tricky conversation to have, to say, look, by the way, when you say X, I feel Y. There'll be some who will say, well, that's your problem. You felt that wasn't my intention. But here, I think it's a really nice opportunity to have a conversation about intention versus impact. Chances are their intention wasn't to make you feel shitty or low or incompetent, but what they said, or often the way they said it, the tone. I had someone I used to work with, and her tone, I was just there was a lot of screen breathing went on, folks. But it was like, look, when you say it in this way, this is the reaction it causes. Are you intending to make that impact? Chances are probably not. Right, okay. It's up to them to change their behavior. You can't change someone's behavior. but by airing it and having that conversation, intention versus impact, that will help. And there's so much out there on having those difficult conversations, so you're not, causing a negative impact by having that.
To add on to that, there are two parts to this, right? We can't control the other person. It's key here. We can control us, how we feel, what we do, but we can't expect the other person to give us what we need. That's a very big thing that I learned. I always, I would say I expect this person to do this. I expect this. I expect that. But it's tough because you can expect, but you can't control what the other person is going to do. You expect this person to apologize to you. This person may not. But what you can control is your emotion. I think that was what I was trying to make a point earlier, is that you are in control of your emotion, of your feelings, and only you can make you feel bad about yourself or make you feel good about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a plan of having a discussion, and that's a second part to me, because the first part is you have to take care of yourself and protect yourself. The second part is how do you move on with this other person. Now those are the steps that Kate mentioned earlier. Great, let's have that discussion. But whatever happened in that, you should not be affected as much, because you are in control. Again, I think this is very difficult to manage. This is something that even myself, I deal with difficult situation on a daily basis, and it still affects me. It still affects me. We're human being. Of course, we feel things. But if you can master that, if you can master control your emotions and your feelings, and don't give permission to, because by understanding those triggers, you already know how your body and how you're going to react to things. By understanding those, analyzing those, you can then have proper time to know, okay, I'm not going to react to this. I'm not going to, feel bad about this. So that's how I would, Trina, just to give a bit of a second part to what Kate was saying, because I think as much as possible, you will do your best. You as a person will do your best with your best intention. But if the other person don't accept it, there's nothing you can do. And that's what it's important for you, for leaders, to understand. Yeah.
It's really hard, because there will be some people you just don't get on with them. We're not asking you to go and be best friends with them, but you have to work with them, clients or whatever. And I had a client, and she was really struggled with the MD of the company. And I said, look, let's create your Teflon mask. So when you go into meetings with him, you're sort of prepared. She's armed and ready, of like, he'll say that, it's just going to bounce off of me, because that's how he is. And I know I'm strong enough. I know my work is good, and I know that I can do that. So we did a lot of work on that, of getting her to that mask ready. It wasn't the most comfortable, but it's how she coped. And I think this is where we talk about coping mechanisms, of understanding what's worked before and what hasn't worked before. Where do we need to turn the dial up? Is it having an open, honest conversation, or is it that acceptance part, like you were saying, Fee, of like, actually, do you know what? I'm just not going to let that person get to me. That's who they are. That's how they operate. They're not choosing to change. I can't change them. I do have control over how I respond and react.
Have a question? Chrissy, how much would you say does a person's level of maturity influence their ability to identify and manage their stress? Very good question.
Oh my God, amazing question, Chrissy. And my partner, he has 2 teenage sons, and one of them is doing A levels here in the UK. So it's the end of their school before they go off to do other things. And he is super laid back. He's super chilled about it. His girlfriend is stressed out. I would say they're both very mature for their age. So I'm not sure if it's necessarily the maturity. I think maybe it's the experience you've had, but also understanding what comes afterwards. There's life after stress. There's life after that. I think if you have children who react with stress or react with anger, there is a fantastic book called My Hidden Chimp, which is just really wonderful to read and work through with children, sort of from ages 5 probably up until 10-ish. So that's a really big tip I give to parents if they're realizing or recognizing that. I think with teenagers, they get it. They're way more intelligent and mature than we give them credit. And or young people start having that conversation, saying, right, I notice I'm seeing some things that I'm wondering if it may be stress, but do you want to just talk me through it? And asking open-ended questions. You know, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? When has this happened before? When does this tend to happen to you?
Yeah.
How could we manage that? I'd be very careful asking the question why. Why are you acting like that? Why are you shouting? Why is an attack question? And that's when automatically put our defenses up. So I wouldn't ask why. Use lots of open-ended questions for them to help themselves and recognize it.
I mean, I agree that for me, stress 10 years ago or even 20 years ago, how I manage stress will be different from how I manage stress now. It's because with experience and with things that you've gone through, all the tools that you learn how to deal with situation, it doesn't bother you as much. And I think when we talk about even the stress level earlier, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, my stress level for the same situation would be like a 8 or 9, now would be like a 2. It's because I know how to deal with it already. So to answer your question, I think to manage stress, you need to learn to be open, to reflect, to understand, and be more self-aware of how you deal with stress. And I think that can be from any level, but you need to be open to one to learn how to figure out, how do you manage your stress level, right? Jean, raise her hand. A question, Jean?
Hi, Kate. Nice to meet you. So personally, I find stress at work is manageable because, work ends, right? You can close your laptop, you can unplug during the weekend. But when your trigger is, let's say, a family member, it's not that easy to like process it,
Hey.
right? And the conversation when you try to process it is actually more difficult. And I remember earlier you said one of your friends her triggers or her mom's triggers. So I was wondering like how did she process it? How do you manage it when your trigger is, let's say, within your immediate circle that you can't easily move away from?
That's
Great
such a
question.
good question because there's so much
Mm,
emotion going on, isn't there?
mm,
So my friend, she had therapy. She was like, I cannot carry on doing this. This is really, really affecting her. So she went and sought some professional support for it. And she now understands the reasons why her mum does what she does. And that's helped her. That's helped her go, this is not something I control. Actually, this is not me. It is her mum and her mum's past and everything that's involved in that. So I think it is that deep understanding. I think in the moment when you have that emotional reaction that seems, times 100, really trying to understand it from the other person's perspective. What is going on for them? We know our nearest and dearest very well. We may not know everything. So trying to not make those assumptions. Fee, you talked a lot about not making assumptions before, absolutely, but really trying to understand it from their perspective, what's happened, what's gone on. I know that for my friend, her mum had a really tough time. I don't know everything about it. So there will be things that will possibly go back to that tough time that then she will explode with. And because my friend has changed her behavior, her mum has also recognized that and is becoming really self-aware and doing a lot of work on herself now. So, there's been a really lovely positive knock-on effect here.
I hope that answered your question, Jean. I know this is a tough one, especially when it comes to family. There is no really an exact, answer for that. It's probably something that you will have to try out, what works. Is it having more conversation, more open conversation, or is it like what Kate say, having the understanding? It varies depending on how your relationship is with this person, and then you'll have to adjust to see. I think at the end of the day, if you want to make it work and they want to make it work, you both will try. So I think that's what I would
Trying
say.
different things.
Yeah.
I know someone else who wrote their dad a letter because their dad doesn't communicate well.
Mm.
So he chose to write him a letter.
Mm.
Write him a
Whatever
letter.
works, so different
And
different
that
ways.
opened up the conversation. It was
Yeah.
a conversation that was written and initially, and then they started to talk. But his father, through his background, was told and had been taught to never show emotion. So they
There you go.
started
So
one.
then it's different, right? And that's why
It's finding another
they're having
tool, right?
issues. Yeah.
Yes, I think it could be also tied with Azreen's question actually. So I think because a mental health leave, I mean it's really good. Like I'm really thankful for that. But sometimes it's quite difficult for people or others, right, to apply for it because it's also like it's either you're worried about the workload, it's you're not really open to showing that you're having a problems or you're going through something personally. So it's challenging to apply for it, right? So in your experience, are there other ways a virtual company like Greenpark could do to either help prevent burnout, mental health stress, or at least something that office mates could do for each other in a virtual space?
Yes, hi Matt, thank you so much. And yes, that ties in really well with Azreen's question as well. So I think the Wellness in Action plan I mentioned is fantastic because you can write it being a virtual company. And picking up on those signs. As Renu said, you can't always detect the signs from our colleagues. Start with a Wellness in Action plan, getting people to fill those out because therefore your awareness is heightened already. I think the other part of this, and I know everyone's doing a lot, you're like, don't give me another thing to do, Kate, I'm overwhelmed as it is, but actually having well-being check-ins, whether that's every month or every quarter or even every week. And that's when COVID hit in the UK, I was working with an organization and we just started to do that with everybody. And they've kept it going, which is fantastic. Right, okay, I know I have to check in with my team this week. No work is spoken about, it's how are you? And I think crucially here, ask twice. How are you? Oh yeah, I'm fine. No. How are you really? This is a brave, safe place. Help me to help you. How are you? And having those check-ins, and there's loads of tools out there about what to ask in a well-being or mental health check-in to enable the other person to open up and to speak openly and honestly about what they're going through. And that helped a lot of the people in this company. We had someone who had chronic social anxiety and it was affecting his work because he was having to go to meetings, and that really caused him a lot of stress, so he wouldn't go. So we had to step in and help him, but that only happened because we understood what was going on because he was having these check-ins. So I think that's partly that.
Just to add on to that again, I think there's two parts to this. As managers and as leaders, I think Kate, you mentioned that it's our responsibilities to check in and make sure we ask twice and all those things. So that's one part. But the other part is you have to be brave enough to say you need help, and you have to be brave enough to say that thing, not thinking that you're going to be weak. And this is what I mentioned earlier, because you mentioned, Matt, that maybe it was being afraid of saying that you're struggling because you don't want to be seen as somebody who is weak, or you don't want people to think that you're struggling, or you don't want people to know what's happening in your personal life, and so, but you have to reach out. Maybe you don't have to tell the full story, maybe you don't have to give the details, but you just have to reach out and say that I'm struggling right now, and because of that it might affect my work, and I'm trying to work on it. I just need a bit of empathy. And I think that helps, because I honestly think that all the heads here and all the managers have empathy, right? They do understand, and to me it's just a matter of making sure that you have to say it, because if you don't, you can't assume, that the leaders or the managers can just immediately tell what you're going through. Sometimes they may suspect because maybe your performance is down, or maybe the way that you act to things, and they might suspect. But if you don't talk to them and they ask you how you are and you say you're fine, then how will they?
Do you know, Sophia, I couldn't agree more. When I was going through everything all those years ago, my boss said, "Look, there's something not right. Are you okay?" And I couldn't say it. I was so scared, and then I burnt out.
Yeah.
I was so stressed. I lost my hair. It was just awful. It was awful. And I think now I use with clients who are just, oh, I can't say anything. I can't say anything. And Ish, you've put a question in here is about people who are quite private. They don't want to really think about what's the worst case scenario here. If you don't say anything, what's the worst case that's going to happen? Probably not great, especially if you're going towards burnout. What's the best case? You get the support you need. What's the most likely case scenario? Well, chances are someone is going to listen to you, and you might have to try a few things to find the right support for you. I think the other thing, Fee, what you said really brilliantly was, look, I'm really struggling. You don't need to have the answers. You don't need to have the solution to that struggle. Because, and this is the wonderful phrase of a problem shared is a problem halved. Well, if you're talking to somebody, especially with more experience, they go, oh, I used to have, yeah, that's fine, don't worry, right, let's try this. Let's sort this out. Let's help with these things here. Here are some tools to help you. Here's some techniques. Or, oh, okay, right, we need to look at your workload then. And I used to work with a lady, and she used to book her mental health days in throughout the year after certain really intense projects. So she knew she'd have 2 months of just full on. So she'd put a mental health day in because she needed to recharge. Or she knew she was working with a really difficult client. She put a mental health day in halfway through that project because she just needed a switch off day away from him. So I think it's finding the things to help yourself to best support yourself. And if you don't have the answers, that's okay.
Yep. I think that I just wanted to also say that we are all work in progress. We are still trying to figure things out, how we work, how we think, how we progress, and we are always ever evolving to improve ourselves. And so I think the what we need to do is just be kind to ourselves, and we have to tell ourselves that it's okay. Right, when we are going through things, I think we forget sometimes to love ourselves. I think that's the thing, right? So it's important because we are so harsh on ourselves, and we put ourselves, so we are high performance, we're doing all of these things, and we forget to just give us permission to be kind to ourselves and to love ourselves, and it's okay. So I think I just want us to end the call with that. And I know it's a very hot topic, there's a lot of questions, and I love it. Thank you guys, thank you so much. A really good call, a really good session today. Bye.